Ready and go.
Didn't say what the rules were, so.
We're talking about strength.
Strength.
All right.
Hi, welcome to 40 Fit Foo.
This is episode 4. Right, throw up your 4 signs. So we're going to talk about strength. I think it's important that I let people know that the way my mind works, things just pop in my head, right?
Okay.
And when I look at ourselves here, and if you're 40 years old, you're going to know this, if you grew up in the East Coast especially, is In Living Color had men on film.
Oh.
Right? That's not what I was thinking about, but one of the characters always said, strumpf.
Oh.
And I always loved that.
Okay.
And I don't know, that's the first thought that came into my mind when I saw that.
Fair enough.
Was strumpf, is how he said strength. So today we're going to talk about strength specifically for Kung Fu.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it up to you.
Well, you are the strong one in this scenario here. And actually, that's Oscar's specialty. So Sifu Oscar works primarily all day helping people get stronger. And I think people, what I'd like to actually hear you talk about is I think people have a misconception about strength. Like back in the, Arnold 80s, Santa Monica, Venice Beach,
Yeah.
Bodybuilding. Like, I think when people think about strength, that's what they think of. But for me, I think about my dad doing Tom Tuis, which are basically single leg squats or pistols or however you term them. But to me, that is strength. And so you don't have to have huge, ungodly muscles in order to have strength. Actually, a lot of those people
Or huge godly muscles.
Right, godly, you're right. Actually, my understanding is sometimes they're, I always tell the kids, like, use your muscles for good. Like, if they're all, like, big and buff, like my little cousins, and so, like, come help me move stuff is basically what I say, what I'm asking them to do. But I think there's a misconception of strength, and specifically for Kung Fu, my dad always said, well, you can't be too big, then you're like not flexible. You still have to be flexible. So last week we talked about flexibility and movement, but this week I want you to also, kind of give some advice about that. Actually, you do really need to also be strong in addition to flexible and mobile, because strength is a really big factor. I mean, especially those of you who do Wah Lum, maybe you've been to my advanced class, just doing Bifit Style for 15 minutes, definitely take some strength, because your legs, I used to be called Kung Fu legs because, my legs are like horse legs. They're not like really tiny, petite stems. So like
They're muscular legs.
I like horses. It's okay. It's my year. I'm the year of the horse. So
something I was actually jealous of your legs when before I started Kung Fu.
We actually, so but anyway, strength is really an important component of it, and so I'd like to throw it back your way, maybe, to kind of clear up that misconception of what strength is, but also like how that applies to the stuff that we do.
Yeah. So I like to say that strength is a master quality. Now, let me just put a little caveat there. So if you're not in pain, like if you're moving in pain, then your priority is get out of pain, right? But if you're able to kind of move and get into certain ranges of motion with pain-free, then your first priority should be to get strong. I talked about it a little bit with our flexibility episode last week, that you want to use your strength even to get into certain positions, right? So that's first, is you should think of strength as a master quality. And a good way to think of it as an analogy is that if you think of a cup, right? And what you want to put inside of that cup, are qualities like flexibility and mobility and agility and speed and power. Well, the cup is actually strength. And the bigger your cup, the more abilities you're going to be able to put into it, okay? So let's talk about it, how specifically it works for you Kung Fu practitioners. To get into a horse stance isn't just mobility, it is actually, it's actually strength as well. To develop power into your kick, you can't just throw your kick with just speed and hope that that's all that happens to get there. To get speed and power, you need strength first. And I was just talking actually to a couple of female students who aren't even able to do a push-up without pain because they hyperextend their elbow. So even to get into a certain position, someone who's hypermobile needs strength to then stabilize and put themselves in a good position. So those are some ways I started thinking about how do we address, getting stronger into those things. I don't know what else should I talk about?
Well, we do have a listener question from William Sanchez in Seattle.
Oh wait, I'm not even going to read it. But does this question involve kicking people in the face?
It does actually. It does actually involve kicking someone in the face. But that's actually a legitimate question because we did talk about last week, that active range with mobility, but there is the strength to actually be able to hold that position, and I think actually to put power behind the movement.
Okay. Okay, yes, you need strength.
Billy's Oscar's cousin, by the way, so thanks for that.
Right. Yeah, he always wants to see you kick someone in the face.
Yeah.
So
he'll get to see it one day.
So okay, well think of it like this, right? If you have someone who is pretty mobile,
mm-hmm.
and let's take sparring for example.
Okay.
And I spar with people who are very flexible,
mm-hmm.
and they can get those kicks high and pretty fast, and it's like little stings, right? But if they don't have strength behind it, then I will take 10 of those kicks to deliver my one. Yeah. Is the way I look at it. So yes, you need a little bit of strength there. If we start thinking about more logistics, specifically to Kung Fu, doing your Kung Fu basics, you're going to build a lot of strength in your legs, mm-hmm. specifically in your quads, right? And so what I've noticed after training is that a nice way to think about your strength training outside of Kung Fu is to balance it with the other side, your hamstrings and your butt, mm-hmm. With things like deadlifts and my favorite, which is kettlebell swings. And so I'm going to transition to that real quick because a kettlebell swing is a really nice complement to Kung Fu training because with our stance work, we do a lot of quad exercises, right. The front side of your legs. And with your kettlebell, then you also get to do the posterior chain, your booty, your hamstrings, and in addition, you start working this kind of timing aspect of tension and relaxation. And so that's really an explosive power. Yeah. But before you can even be explosive, you have to be able to lift the kettlebell. And to lift the kettlebell, you need a certain amount of strength. So this is why, again, I'm going back, strength is the master quality. It's what you should be working on first.
Yeah, absolutely. And, these are definitely things that you can do on your own. However, with stuff like kettlebell, I actually recommend people to find a really awesome trainer, like an SFG, like Sifu Coach Oscar, or there's lots of them all around the world. So definitely you want to be careful with that because a lot of people say, I don't want to work out with weights because I hurt my back last time. And so, definitely you want to be responsible with that and actually get the right technique, just like you would for any Kung Fu movement. Right. You want to learn the technique before you just start jumping into different movements. We did also have another question that was submitted earlier, and actually, even though this isn't the balance episode, we are going to talk a little bit more about that in the future, but Ellis actually sent a question about how can I help balance, and there is actually a correlation between strength and balance, and I'll let the expert here.
Well, okay, so for balance, what's the first thing you think about? It's kind of like you raise one leg and you're balancing on one leg. Mm-hmm. Well, the act of you lifting your leg up, and this is not getting like specific with like anatomy, but you are flexing one side of your hip and you're extending the other side of your hip, and in order to do that you need strength to get into that position, and in addition you're putting downward force into the ground, which requires strength. So one of the best ways to get balance, to build balance, is to build strength on that with single leg exercises, because you being strong on that limb will then kind of be feedback to your system that says, oh, I'm safe in this position, and that will allow for better balance. If you're not able to like pick up your leg, like if let's say someone were to come to me and train with me, and just before they even train, I said, all right, you know what, pick up your leg and let's see if you can hold it for 10 seconds. If they can't even hold it for 10 seconds, that's either a severe lack of strength or, man, they could have a neurological problem. So I'd be like, you know what, maybe we should check this out. So it's actually, a balance test can be a strength test because you need a certain amount of strength just to be able to hold yourself up.
And just speaking about that single leg, kind of what you just mentioned, I know one of the most important exercises you guys do is like single leg deadlift, single leg work in general. And because I think it'd be cool if you explained a little bit about that, most positions you're taking off from one leg. Like people always think, oh, why are you just doing things on one leg? Or, especially for us, like we talked about kicking earlier, if you don't have that golden chicken, right, Kung Fu guys, if you don't have that position to be able to have the balance and the strength to hold yourself in that position, of course, you're not going to be able to execute the movement. But a lot of single leg work in strength is really important, right? Yeah,
so if we talk about Kung Fu, right, we're going to spend a lot of time in Bai Fu Cao in a riding horse stance. So you're going to be spending a lot of time with two legs, right? And if you want to complement your training, I mean, you're going to get it with Kung Fu anyway, but on your own, if I were to say, okay, there's only one exercise that you can do.
Yep.
If I were to say, that would be a deadlift, which is a 2-leg thing, then then someone would say, well, what's the only thing I should do? I would say do single leg deadlifts.
I was actually going to ask you that.
Yeah, because you're working the posterior chain, right? You're working
Yep.
the butt, the hamstring, and you're doing single leg strength, and that has a direct correlation of transfer to everything else. And almost all action takes place on one leg.
Mm-hmm.
Still, things happen usually on 2 legs, but almost every action point happens by pushing off one leg.
For example,
Kicking, running, walking, one leg holding. Even when you're sparring and you're moving from side to side, you're not on 2 feet.
mm-hmm.
You know, you're transferring weight from one to another.
So most sports activity too, I know this is specific to Kung Fu, but for athletes, they always say single leg
the
work.
only sport that I can think of just off the top of my head that, okay, this is a sport that requires 2 legs is if you're like one of those
Rowing,
rowers. Yeah, like a rower, right? Other than that, everything that's action-wise, it usually takes place off of 1 foot. Even if you think that you're pushing off of 2 feet, we all have a dominant side and you kind of explode off of one side more. So yes, I would say single leg work would be it. And if we had right now, hands tied behind my back, and you're like, what's one exercise that you can do? The only one, I would say, well, just do single leg deadlifts. Because you're going to be working on strength, balance, you're going to be working on the posterior part, and if you're already doing Wah Lum Kung Fu or Kung Fu in general, you're already going to be taking care of a lot of the other aspects.
Awesome. And I know if you guys are actually, another shameless plug, but if you follow Control Your Health on Instagram, he does a lot of these exercises and takes you through it. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, if you go back,
he does a lot of different clips,
yeah.
And also our YouTube channel on Wah Lum Films. We have the Kung Fu Pod, and we do a lot of these exercises. A few weeks ago, we talked about the horse stance, getting into the horse stance. So if you want to see those things, this is not the podcast for that. This is not the action
This is
cast.
the podcast to listen.
This is to listen and absorb and
and prepare ourselves for dinner.
Right. Actually, this is our dinner time. So
right. So, yeah, if you go back on Control Your Health, either I think on Instagram or Facebook or even YouTube, like I have an instructional thing on single leg deadlift, on how to do that, on kettlebell swings. I have a whole series on the kettlebell swing, and then if I were to round it off, I would say. Get up is also an excellent exercise.
Gotta love the get up.
Because which a get up is basically you're from the ground and then standing up, getting up, but then we want to load that with a weight and continuously make that a heavier weight. And so that does a lot of things. One is it promotes a lot of strength and stability of the shoulder, but then when you're moving into the different ranges of motion, it promotes a lot of mobility in the shoulder and then mobility of the whole entire body. So it's like this nice checklist that you can do and say, oh, how do my ankles feel? How do my hips feel? How does my shoulder feel? How does my back? Everything. So, yeah, single leg deadlifts / kettlebell swing and get ups. That's the secret.
We said you could only pick one.
I know.
Well,
and in addition,
well, the thing is, and those of you who do our Kung Fu with our classes, I know it feels like you can barely get in just to get in to do the Kung Fu. So we don't want you to feel concerned that you're not going to be able to do the movements you need to do by just doing the Kung Fu. This is just a really awesome complement if you want to take it to the next level, and if you really want to develop your skills quicker, if you want to accelerate more, if you want to do, if you've got all this extra time on your hands at home, and you're like, oh, I can do some cross training, or
so wait, you're saying, okay, if you just want to be average, just do the regular stuff. If you want to excel, then do more.
Yes. If you want to really do Kung Fu, no.
So this is which
is the hard work part of it, then you've really
this is advice for life.
Advice for life, pretty much,
right.
Yeah.
Advice for life.
Well, this is Kung Fu, right? It's
right.
hard work and kind of that ethic. But a lot of people do ask, because they've seen Master Chan, Grandmaster Chan do Tom Tweez, when am I going to be able to do that? It definitely doesn't start with trying to do that movement. It's a progression, so don't feel bad when you are taking it down a few notches and having to start with the basics. I think actually it's much more beneficial because A, you don't get injured, and B, as you progress and grow with it, you actually are reinforcing all the things that you need to do along the way and strengthening your body and your mind and kind of getting prepared. So don't just try to jump into some of these movements. I know Wah Lum especially is really challenging. There's a lot going on. You have coordination and you're memorizing Chinese. So I know there's a lot, but definitely take it one step at a time, and the same thing with the strength program. You definitely don't want to just jump in. If you feel like you can't do a single leg deadlift, there's lots of options.
There's a ton of other options, but so in a generality there, right? And to make it, or to simplify the thought process behind it, is if you're doing training, whether it's Kung Fu or strength training, first, give yourself a little beginner's mindset, okay? Humble yourself, fool, okay? Make yourself a little bit humble. Humility, right? But so let's use an example, right? Let's say you're doing a horse stance, riding horse stance, and you're pushing yourself really hard, but it's making your form look like crap. Mm-hmm. Then you've passed the limit. So then what I would do is make the adjustment so that if this is your limit, you're right here, like you're right next to it, and you're getting really close to it. If you're pushing past the limit, then it can affect your training, mm-hmm. and you won't really progress that way, right? Because you're constantly failing. Whereas if you're like pushing yourself close to the limit, and this is why you have to have a good coach or a good instructor who can say, hey, slow it down, or to put you in that position. Absolutely. But if you're there, then you can be consistent. And if you're consistent, that is really where the progress comes. So mediocre consistent workouts will outbeat your one heroic workout of the year.
Yeah, don't be
every
a hero.
Time. Now is a good time that anyone who knows me, I'm going to give my hero speech. It's a short speech. Don't be a hero.
Play it
actually,
safe.
Really the purpose of that is if you're training, be safe, right? There are times where you want to push yourself.
Of course.
Right? And the fact that...
Or we want to push you.
But the fact that, like, if you come and train at Wah Lum, right? That's it. You succeeded. You showed up. Give yourself a high five. Now let's try to put you in an environment where you can succeed, right? And there's going to be moments like your infamous Thanksgiving workout where you will get pushed really hard. But most of the time, you just want to be consistent. You want to leave your training session feeling better than when you came in, so that you can live to fight another day.
Yeah. So this is 40 Fit Fu, so it's not exclusive to those who are rounding 40 and up, but everyone can tune in. But this is specifically for us and you who are, moving through life at a different pace, have a lot of distractions, and find that some of these movements, some of the Kung Fu has been challenging. And so any advice we can give you, please always let us know. We want more feedback. Ask any questions. We're really happy to answer them. I thank you guys for tuning in. I see a lot of comments today, and I finally figured out the setup, and I've got the laptop now so that I can comment and not mess up the feed. And so we're doing a good job. But thank you guys for all tuning in.
Do we have any more questions?
Not so much questions, but a lot of compliments, and I'm really happy about that. I know that some people are also saying, Joe said, pushing past the proper form, so thanks for kind of reinforcing that. And yeah, we absolutely want you guys to work hard all the time, but we want you to work safe first.
Right.
So
I would like to give like a quick shout out to my brother who's watching.
Marco.
Because let me tell you about this guy. He's always been really strong. This kid,
Baby Hulk.
Yeah, when he was young, he would use his anger and show his strength, and he'd be able to lift stuff off the ground that people would just be like, holy smokes, look at the strength that this guy has. So little props to my brother, older brother. He's always been pretty strong. Not anymore. Now I'm stronger than him. I put in the work. But
consistency over time.
Genetically, he was stronger than I was when we were younger. I just wanted to put that out there.
So all our friends are tuning in now, which is awesome. So Pete just said he was told to tune in because someone was getting kicked in the face. Maybe next time. That'll be your teaser to tune in for next time.
And really, we know that
Kit.
you're going to be kicking me in the face. So that's fine. That's fine. We'll do that.
All right. Well,
what else? Anything else to wrap
other
this
questions or anything? I think everybody's kind of got a lot of information for today. I don't know what we're talking about next week. What are we talking about next week?
Well, we will make it up, or if you guys have any suggestions, give us a suggestion, and we'd be more than happy to talk about it. I mean, it can be about nutrition.
Yeah, I think nutrition was on the schedule, but we're not locked in. So, I don't know if you guys saw our pre-post, but ice cream and not ice cream. But we do love ice cream.
Yeah, I do love ice cream.
But we are gonna talk about nutrition, and balance coming up, and a lot of the stuff that relates to Kung Fu. But please, we're open to suggestions and comments and everything. So let's ask for core ? So that could be in the future.
Yeah.
Plank.
What's funny about
we'll talk
core
about that in the future.
is that
this is a strength kind of.
Is that
over
in the fitness community? There's some like bougie fitness people who are like, no, we don't call it the core, but
what do they call it?
I don't know, man. People are like, there's no real core, it's everything. But We can go down a really bad rabbit hole.
Well, what it is that without going down the rabbit hole, we don't like to just isolate muscles. We like everything to be kind of moving in conjunction, especially for Kung Fu.
Right, but it's a valid question about core, and we can talk about it. I'd be happy to go into it. I feel like there's this recurring theme every single time that we talk, where I say, "Oh my God, I could talk about this forever." I think it's happened every single episode, and I really could. But I would like to leave you guys with this: is remember that you want to be consistent. You want to be able to push yourself right to your limit and be kind of working there, not past the limit, because that's where injuries happen. And know that success is kind of this wave that goes like this.
Yeah.
Where some days you'll feel like you progressed, and then other days you're like, man, I don't feel like I progressed, but it's still successful because you learn from that. And then you will take that information and then go up. As long as the trend moves like that.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to be on the plateau. I did blog about that, so I'll link that for you guys. But yes, keep on it.
Any questions, let us know.
Yeah.
We are happy to answer it.
So you can tune in on Sifu Mimi Chan or on the
Control
Your Health. And also you can catch us on Instagram as well. He posts some fitness videos, and we also, you can catch me on my Culture Chat podcast blog, and I do sometimes some of the Kung Fu
Keith, if you're watching,
so
I know you're in China.
He's in Shenzhen, so
work out today.
I told him to eat roast goose for us.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So you told him to work out. I told him to eat roast goose. So, but thank you guys all for tuning in. I love it. This has been awesome, and we will be here back on track next week. So
I will be working on my arm wrestling skills. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you guys for tuning in.